So welcome. This is our TRT Roundtable, which we're super excited about. So one of our big goals is to make sure you guys ask a lot of questions about anything. This is one of those topics that, we want to make sure we're discussing in a way that is educational, useful, and practical. So we've got on our board just a wealth of knowledge. Like, I'm so excited myself, so if I geek out a little, that's just Lacey geeking out because I love it. But I'll be moderating, so if you guys have questions, I'll make sure to snag those. We kind of have a little bit of an outline of things we want to talk about, but by all means, we can go off in a different direction if need be for a little bit. We got enough time. We set aside quite a bit of time for this just because it's such a great topic and things that most conferences don't talk about, which is unfortunate, so we'll make sure we do. All right, so first off, I'm Lacey, so like I said, I'll be moderating. I'm a dietitian by trade, so I work with a lot of athletes, both amateur and professional, in so many different sports. I just love sport, so this is a topic that a lot of dietitians don't even touch with a 10-foot pole, which is unfortunate because there is definitely nutritional considerations and things, so it's a big area of interest for me, so I love to moderate this. I'm going to let our panel introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what they do in that field, and then we'll get started. So go ahead, panel.
Ladies first.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Thornhill. I am a nurse practitioner. I work with Frontline Alternative Medicine. So we treat hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, medical weight loss, a lot of nutritional counseling with patients. We follow kind of a concierge medicine model, so our patients are very involved in our care. We speak pretty often, from sexual function to energy, mental clarity. We really have to address a lot of things with hormone balance, and so I think it's important with this industry that patients are very interactive with the providers, and there's a lot of follow-up, and I think that's where a lot of general practitioners kind of miss the ball with providing the best care for the patient. So I've been a nurse practitioner just for a few years. I've been in healthcare as a nurse for 23 years. I've worked with the VA healthcare system the bulk of my career prior to getting into hormone replacement therapy. Definitely a different world where my patients, for the most part, I was explaining to my peers here, they are very interested in hearing what I have to say. I don't feel like I'm begging someone to make changes to their routine or to the nutrition. They're very willing to listen and absorb what they can to try to feel better and look better and perform better, and that's really important that patients take an active role and not just listen to what they're told by the providers. I work also in the Air Force Reserve as an aeromedical evacuation flight nurse. I see a lot of combat veterans who have serious deficiencies in some of these sex hormones that is affecting not only their ability to do their job, but their mental health and their ability to manage conditions that they've incurred from their combat. So, I enjoy what I do, and I'm very honored to be here with you showing it today.
My name is Serrano. I'm a MD. I've been a doctor for 30 years, and I like to see weird things, weird cases. The easy stuff bothers me or annoys me, so that's what basically I do.
Yeah, so I'm George, and second time I'm being hosted by the educational seminars. I'm a biopathologist and I work in my own business in Athens, Greece. I've been associated with Anabolics book and Muscular Development magazine and YouTube, and we've been writing with Rick Collins for a couple of years now. Rick is for 2 decades now in the Muscular Development. I've been for 3 years writing, and being hosted for other YouTube channels like Generation Sorano, David Malumbo, Muscular Development, and we have the same passion about the bodybuilding culture and this monopoly regarding he's the steroid lawyer and I'm the doctor that deals with the harm reduction, the replacement therapy in bodybuilding. So I'm really pleased and thankful to be here again and looking forward for another seminar.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to just so everybody can hear me. I'm Rick Collins, and yes, thank you for that introduction, George. I've been writing for Muscular Development magazine for, I guess, just about 20 years now. I'm a lawyer, unlike my medical team here, you know. I was a prosecutor. I've been doing criminal defense and working in the dietary supplement space for 2 decades. I wrote a book a number of years ago called Legal Muscle, which was about anabolic steroids in American law, culture, politics, medicine, ethics, sports, all aspects of it. I've been writing MD, my column called Busted in MD, for a number of years, and I've probably handled more anabolic steroid, SARMs, peptide, research chemical, criminal matters than any other lawyer. I represent people on doping cases if they're accused of either taking a banned substance in sports, or if they're on probation, or a police officer, or anybody who's subject to drug testing. I work with a lot of dietary supplement and nutrition companies to try to avoid the legal problems so that they don't wind up in a criminal indictment, and making sure that they are compliant in everything that they do. I've written a lot and spoken a lot about performance drugs, about performance, about health in testosterone replacement, in the use of anabolic steroids. I was part of a research team a number of years ago that conducted the largest survey of adult non-medical steroid use that was ever conducted. We had about 2,000 respondents, and really looked at the demographics of who's using anabolic steroids, what are their motivations in using anabolic steroids non-medically, outside the context of a prescription. What are they, what are their health effects? All aspects of that, and that's something that we can certainly talk about. So this is, I think, my 3rd year here.
Yeah.
I want to thank Michael and Lacey for inviting me, and hopefully we'll have some fun and spirit. We're going to be open to your questions, and hopefully it can be interactive as we go through. So thank you for having me.
All right, so as you see, we've got a panel of people that have very large amounts of knowledge, as well as very different perspectives on that knowledge. So that's going to be very cool. So this first we're going to first talk about what testosterone replacement is as far as in sport and general population kind of benefits and that kind of stuff, as well as talk about the legalities of those things, kind of get a general overview first, and then we'll start talking about anti-aging a little bit, how that goes into that world, as well as just overall performance, get into different other SARMs and peptides and that kind of stuff, so that you guys kind of know, because those are some gray areas out there that I don't even, as much as you try to stay up on it, I don't even know if I can keep up with what's going on out there with that stuff. So we'll kind of start with that. Each one of the panel members can kind of give their take on what testosterone replacement is used for, why, some of the benefits, not only for population and prescribed use, as well as maybe some of that stuff you see outside of prescribed use. So go ahead, and you guys can all give a little perspective on that if you could.
I'm going to stand up because I like Rick. I got ants on my ass. I can't sit down.
Wait, hold on. I got to interrupt before you start.
What's the number?
Panel, if you can, just do your best to speak loud. We're picking you up fine on the mic, but people in the back may not be able to hear you as well. So, just everybody.
I started with testosterone many years ago, and I've been dealing with patients like that. Now, recently, I've been using testosterone, and I know they're going to talk about testosterone. I'm going to make it quick. I've been using it for different things now instead of what typically people will use it to gain muscle or whatever. Recently, I've been getting cases with kidney failure, people with breast cancer, people with prostate cancer, and that's kind of medically a no-no for testosterone. But when the people come to see me, they have tried everything, or they have gone everywhere. So I have been dealing with special cases. Testosterone is an amazing medication. I don't want to call it a drug. I don't like to use the word anti-aging because I don't give a shit what they tell you. you're gonna get old. I don't give a shit what they say. You can based on testosterone, you can based on growth hormone. I do not care. That is even Rick is getting old. I can see it because I see it every year, right? But testosterone can do wonders for people that truly need it. Now, I know that it's used for performance. I know that it's used for all kinds of things. Again, I'm using it for weird things. For example, I have a lady that was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and this lady has been seen by the specialist. Chemotherapy, her hemoglobin is 6.2. Normal for a woman is between 11 and 13, right? And this lady can do anything. So in my office, I make her come over, and boom, 200 milligrams of testosterone. And I know you guys are gonna go, what? A woman with 200 milligrams of testosterone? Well, in 11 days, her hemoglobin went from 6.2 to 12, which make her feel fantastic, right? Of course, this lady goes back to the oncologist. I tell it, you can tell her to check your levels. Of course, they check the levels. They call me and say, you're killing this woman. You know, she's gonna die. I said, okay, what is she gonna die first? From the cancer, from the anemia, or from the testosterone that I'm giving her? Note that her levels were just slightly above normal, okay? They were not that high. She gets 200 milligrams every 2 weeks and keeps her hemoglobin around 12. Another case that I have is a patient, and I have many cases of prostate cancer. And the reason I'm using this right now is because I know most people here, testosterone for performance, I want to show you what it can do. When a person gets prostate cancer, most of the physicians, and I know George, don't do this, will completely, you cannot have testosterone. By the way, testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. It is absolutely a bullshit lie, okay? It is, how do I know? Because I have hundreds of patients that have prostate cancer and they come to see me after they remove the prostate cancer, after they have done everything. Most men have no life after they get the prostate removed, or they get the seeds, or they get whatever they're gonna do with the prostate cancer. The reason I'm bringing this up because the majority of guys here are men. Every man will get prostate cancer. It doesn't matter who you are. You're gonna get it. It just matters when you're gonna get it, okay? So every man in this room will get prostate cancer, including me, including Rick, you know.
Me?
Yes. I will use prostate as a way to treat a lot of patients because, again, they come to see me. So I'm going to tell you the last case that I had. I had a patient that came in with just the removal of prostate cancer. The reason I always see a man with their wife. If the man dies, he will not sue you. Who's going to sue you is the wife. I learned this from Rick, right? So I always bring the wife and the husband together because if the guy dies, he's not going to sue you, right? But the wife will, or the kids will sue you. So usually what I do, I meet with both of them and I ask them, what do you guys want? And I said, since my husband had a anti-androgen therapy, prostate, we don't have a life. We don't do motorcycle rides, we don't have sex, we don't do anything. So I said, okay, what do they tell you? Testosterone was fed the prostate cancer, and that's why you got it. Well, if we were going to get prostate cancer, when would you get it? If the testosterone was the cause, when you were younger or when you were older? When you were younger, because that's when your testosterone levels are the highest. Well, in this case, I talked to the wife. I made sure, listen, you don't have a life. What do you wanted me to do? And I will start that patient on testosterone, even though you're not always prostate cancer. I do keep an eye on the PSA. I do not believe on PSA, by the way. How many women do we have here? Do you girls have PSA or not?
We have.
The girls who have PSA, it's bullshit. Total bullshit. I can measure a PSA on a girl and it be positive, okay? Now, PSA will be dependent on your cycle. PSA will be dependent if you use anabolic steroids. So I just want to tell you that. So if a girl checks her PSA levels, they'll be there. For some women, that's meaningless. It depends when you are on your cycle again, and depends if you're taking anabolic steroids. Now, I don't care about that number. I care about the PSA free. So if men are here that are checking their PSA and they don't check a PSA free, wasting your time. Okay, so make sure that when you have a client or a patient, check your % free PSA because that's what matters. So for example, if you have a PSA of 1.7, which is absolutely normal, but your % free is only 0.4%, that patient has to be watched closer than a guy that has a PSA of 18 with a % free PSA of 40. I will give you one sample. I had a patient with a 2.7 PSA having issue with urination. I checked that, I felt a mass. I check it, I send them for a MRI. I don't send my patients for biopsies, by the way. I send them for MRI, it's called a fusion MRI, which is a specific test to look at the prostate. It showed cancer, right? Now, once they show cancer, I gotta respect the lawyers, so I send them to the oncologist or whoever is the urologist, and they remove this patient's prostate, right? Which is fine. It's been 7 years, it's perfect, no issues. But I just want to tell you, so I just wanted to give you a different outlook of testosterone. It's an amazing medication. I don't call it a drug. It's an amazing way to get you better and stronger. It's not an anti-aging medication. Any questions on what I said? Okay.
It's my turn. So testosterone replacement therapy is a lifetime treatment to a disease that has no cure. Basically, men age because their hormones decline. Everybody ages, and even women age. But women with low testosterone cannot live healthy. Usually the andropause hits after the mid-30s or early 40s, and after each decade it declines 10%. Actually, each year annually declines 1%. So testosterone separates men from boys, okay? And testosterone is the main androgen that has great benefits to the health of the man. Now, low testosterone is associated with prostate cancer because prostate cancer is linked with high estrogens, and estrogens proliferate the cells of the prostatic gland. That's why men with low testosterone have prostate cancer, because of the excessive visceral fat, the gynecomastia. And actually, bodybuilders rarely have prostate cancer that abuse massively androgens. Now, low testosterone is linked with depression because testosterone is reduced to DHT, which is the main androgen, and it's great. It has benefits against depression. Castrated men, the old-fashioned way to treat prostate cancer was to castrate men and shut off GnRH from the hypothalamus. So basically, they developed severe depression. That also is linked to the optimization, the lack of optimization. Testosterone optimizes the main neurotransmitters, serotonin, which is the joy hormone, and dopamine, that is linked with the feeling of reward. And also erectile dysfunction that leads also to depression, because the man's pride and the ego is affected mainly by the erectile dysfunction. Actually, libido is way more important to have sex rather than erectile dysfunction. That's why some urologists cannot treat the cause of the problem from where it starts by giving the 5-phosphodiesterase inhibitors like Cialis, Levitra, or Viagra, because it's just a blood flow to the penis, unlike the sexual desire and the libido that starts from a brain. So testosterone, as Morgenthaler says, is a cerebral hormone that affects the limbic system, the hypothalamus, and the amygdala that lead with emotions. Now, testosterone also is linked with anemia, low testosterone. Actually, androgens, before the synthesis of EPO, were treating anemia. So in the long term, testosterone will fight anemia, will improve endurance and stamina by increase of hemoglobin and myoglobin to the skeletal tissues. And also testosterone improves bone mineral density, as all steroids, of course, by increasing osteoblastic activity and calcium retention in the renal tubules, and also fights cachexia and wasting. That in turn will improve also bone mineral density as skeletal muscles grow with physical exercise. So the benefits of testosterone use are way more rather than the alleged side effects out of testosterone use actually during replacement therapy. So it's way more beneficial to start using testosterone, and yet you can avoid erythrocytosis, you can avoid gynecomastia, you can avoid acne, you can avoid hair thinning by treating these cases with certain medications, rather than staying with all those diseases that I mentioned before. So replacement therapy is not a trendy thing. It's not to get jacked or to have sex or to have a better body composition. It's a replacement therapy to somebody who has low testosterone. There's no cure of it because we age, because our hormones decline, and there's no turning back to that. And the problem with endocrinologists and urologists is that you have to be below 300 in order to prescribe you. So if you are 299, they prescribe you. If you are 301, and this is crazy, they do not prescribe you, and you stay in a lousy state of hypogonadism with all this misery, and they give you instead the magic blue pill that of course doesn't treat anything, just a symptom, you know. And I had many cases of people, pathetic people, you know, I mean, I felt really sorry for them. They felt lousy, they look much older, but yet they were not, my colleagues were not helping them, you know. So they start self-medicating. They bought, of course, in Greece you can buy the testosterone in the pharmacy without prescription. So they were covering the expenses. Yes, it's like it's social health system, you know, like in Cuba. So yes, they can provide their own testosterone, and they start living a much better life within 4 weeks. So when the levels rise and elevate, they feel fantastic. Now the two main myths regarding testosterone replacement therapy that are being debunked already is the cardiovascular thing and the prostatic thing. So low testosterone is linked to cardiovascular disease. Number one, testosterone oxidized visceral fat that improves dyslipidemia. Now dyslipidemia is linked with cardiovascular disease, low HDL, high LDL, high total cholesterol. Also testosterone produces nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator to the coronary arteries. And actually infusion of testosterone into the heart improves blood flow. And also there is a positive inotropic effect, meaning the contractility of myocardium, because testosterone improves and optimizes calcium and magnesium that are important elements for muscle contraction. We know that heart is a muscle, of course. And number two, prostate, yes. There's a saturation theory of Morgenthaler that believes that after a certain point, there is no assimilation of the androgen by the androgen receptor. It's like spilling water. So up to a certain point, then there's no assimilation of the testosterone, the androgen by the androgen receptor. And the problem that arises is the excessive estrogen. So actually testosterone does not lead to prostate cancer. It may lead to benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is another story, of course. And of course, an elevated PSA could be prostatitis, could be ejaculation, could be also riding the bike too much. So we can clarify this by those cases. And PSA up to 2, it's fine for a guy in his 40s, all right? So I guess it's way better starting using testosterone if you need it, rather than being fearing of testosterone for the allergen side effects. Now, erythrocytosis is treated by phlebotomies, by the use of aspirin, by proper hydration. Her thing is purely genetical, okay, even though you can apply some antiandrogens like finasteride, dutasteride, or some minoxidil or ketoconazole. And what else? About the prostatic now tissue, you can use some finasteride or dutasteride to minimize under prostatic cancer. And I had a case from the US. This guy was 59 years old. He had a fantastic lifestyle. He was living with women half of his age. Yet he had prostatic cancer. His urologist from Greece told him, okay, use moderate doses of testosterone, actually microdosing, but use also dutasteride along with it, and follow up your PSA twice annually. And he didn't stop testosterone because he said, I prefer to live 5 years like a lion rather than miserable until my 80s. And yeah, you just check the PSA, you have biopsy, okay, and you follow up this thing. And now acne is really rare, okay, you can block DHT for acne. And regarding hair thinning, it's totally, you know, I don't have hair thinning because I'm not genetically predisposed to this. So it's a personal thing if you have the genes for that. So I'm following replacement therapy since 2015 when I retired from bodybuilding, you know. And I believe it's the foundation of youth and can improve physically and mentally the man's quality of living.
Don, you wanna go?
So I think a lot of what the doctors here mentioned was the kind of the patient specificity of hormones. You know, understanding that everyone's you know, internal body chemistry and genetic predisposition and environmental factors that they are around kind of are going to be different. So I think the most important thing to touch on today is understanding the importance of the difference between using steroids or abusing steroids and using hormone replacement therapy in a medical setting. And do they cross over? Absolutely. Do we see some performance enhancing aspects with HRT in a medical setting? Absolutely. But number one, it's overall health of the patient, male and female. And I'd like to touch a little bit on hormone replacement therapy for females. And yes, testosterone is used for females. I myself have been on testosterone replacement therapy for almost 4 years. I'm 43 years old. I won my IFBB Pro card in figure. I was an athlete my entire life. And that's kind of how I found my way into bodybuilding was, I'm getting older and where can I still be competitive? Where can I still get that what I get from competing against other athletes and that camaraderie and that kind of thing. And so, I didn't realize that my hormones were imbalanced. I always carried a decent amount of lean muscle mass as a female, even though I have a genetic predisposition to obesity. I think I'm the only one in my immediate family that's not obese. I was able to stay fairly lean and didn't have to work too hard to do that. And so I never considered that my hormones could be imbalanced. I'm a mother, I have 4 children, so fertility was not an issue. And my coach actually said, I feel like there could be something going on here. We're really struggling with you getting leaner. Let's get a hormone panel done and see what things look like. And I was astonished to find that my thyroid function was not optimal. My testosterone level was not optimal. I was very estrogen dominant. I was producing a lot of estradiol, and that was affecting my performance. So it was also affecting, my day-to-day life. My ability to focus or concentrate at work as a nurse, being able to not have that brain fog in the afternoon when I'm already kind of feeling kind of a lull from energy. My ability to sleep well at night, my sex drive. I didn't realize until my hormones were balanced how much that was affected. I often equate it to a chiropractor. Patients can go for a very long time with their back kind of out of whack, unaligned, little aches and pains here and there, but it feels kind of normal. Once your back is adjusted and you know what it feels like to feel right, you recognize when it's not right. And it's the same with hormones. So females absolutely have to balance their hormones as well for physical health. The doctors mentioned risk for heart disease. It's very common to see patients, females with heart disease with low testosterone levels, and there's an association. Obviously, lean body mass is associated with heart health and obesity, and optimal hormones is important.
Diabetes.
For diabetes, absolutely. Hyperlipidemia, just the overall health, hormones play a major role in that. So it's important to identify gaps in areas where patients have deficiencies. There's genetic predispositions, like Dr. T had mentioned. You look at your family, on your mother's side. Look at the males on mom's side of the family. Do you see a lot of male pattern baldness? Well, you have a higher likelihood to be that carrier of that gene to aromatize the DHT. And so women, anyone like myself, as we age, we start to worry about the aesthetics as we're getting older. We want to stay young and youthful. Thinning hair is not attractive, and that DHT plays a role in that. Hormones play a major role in, the skin. So as females, we find that, glands produce a little bit more oil when our testosterone level is a little bit higher, and so we don't see as much wrinkling of the skin when we have a little bit more oil production and we have more testosterone in our system as a female. So there's a lot of things that females don't realize their testosterone level is affecting. So we treat males and females with hormone replacement therapy, and so I think that it's
Sport that need to kind of know some of the rules out there as far as what your liabilities may be, and just what those rules are as far as the doping laws and stuff like that. So I'm gonna have Rick touch on that a little bit, especially the most recent case there with the Olympic skater that happened to. So kind of give us a little background on that stuff. All yours.
Mr. Corlin, I got a question for you.
Oh boy, he's got questions already.
I used to like baseball. Is it true that baseball dropped the anabolic steroids rule?
So since there's the
More home runs next year.
they're in between contracts.
Yes.
And so there's
Grow.
no program.
Yes.
So we could, and I know you have worked with some baseball
Yes.
folks in the past. So yes. So we're in that interim between steroid testing in baseball and steroid testing in baseball, and we're in that no steroid testing in baseball. And I guess we can talk about what could happen with sophisticated athletes who might want to try to use during that time and not test positive if and when it's reinstituted, right? And obviously there are a lot of different ways that athletes can do that, maybe through microdosing or through, years ago I represented the chemist in the Balco case. How many remember that case, Balco? So there was a place in Northern California called the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, run by a fellow named Conti, who was catering to a lot of sports athletes. And so, there were Olympic athletes like Marion Jones, and there were Jason Giambi, and all of these, different high-profile professional athletes. One of them was Barry Bonds, and Barry Bonds was taking what he claims he believed was flaxseed oil, and he was drinking it, and it was a liquid. And it was created by my client, who was a chemist, and it was called the Clear because it was not something that would it wouldn't show up on a standard doping panel. And it was THG, tetrahydrogestrinone, which was a hybridized steroid molecule that my client made in his laboratory. I don't think he ever anticipated it would be used in the way that it was, but the Balco realized that it's like a fingerprint, right? So if a latent fingerprint shows up, but you don't have anything to match it to, you don't know what it is. So if you have this thing that shows up on a spike and you don't have a reference standard to compare it against, who knows what it is? And so it was actually reverse engineered by the then Olympic doping sleuth Don Catlin, who by reverse engineering figured out this is an anabolic steroid. And it was a cascade of events, and ultimately my client was arrested. But you realized how sophisticated the levels of drug use are at the highest levels in sport. And obviously you have Lance Armstrong, who for many, many years appeared to have been completely clean, and later admitted that all the while he was using microdosing of testosterone and other performance-enhancing drugs. So the question in all drug testing, I guess, is, are the mice getting away without the cats, right? Is this really just a cat and mouse game? And by whatever you test for, there are athletes who can come up with other things potentially. There have been a lot of doping positive for Sarms in the last few years, for Ostarine. How many people know what a Sarm is? How many people don't know what Sarms are? Okay, so SARM is an acronym for Selective Androgen Receptor Modulator. A lot of syllables there. What does it mean? Well, we talked about how testosterone and other anabolic steroids, they stimulate the androgen receptors in the body, in muscle and other places you'd want, but also in places you might not want, like the scalp, for example, or the back. Nobody wants a beautiful case of back knee, right? That's acne of the back. Nobody really likes that, right? So, or the prostate. Nobody wants to really, I need a little more muscle on that prostate, blow that sucker up a little bit. Nobody wants that, right? So a selective androgen receptor modulator will is designed to primarily stimulate the skeletal muscle tissue and not those other bad places where you might not want it to go. So it's not an anabolic steroid, it's not a controlled substance, okay? Although there is a bill pending in Congress to try to make it into a controlled substance, to try to make it a Schedule III drug just like steroids. So Ostarine is probably the most well-known of the SARMs. And so, look, athletes are always looking for something that's going to make them bigger, stronger, faster, right? And how many people know that Bigger, Stronger, Faster as a movie, as a documentary? How many have never seen Bigger, Stronger, Faster? All right, so Netflix, just put it in your queue. It's a 2008 documentary, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, by a filmmaker named Chris Bell, who came to my office long before the movie and sat down and said, let's talk about steroids. And I, myself and another person really were credited as sort of the collaborators and resources that kind of put that movie together. And it's a great movie about, you know, what is performance, what is cheating, who's using steroids, all of those issues. And so highly recommended. You know, the most recent scandal is Valieva, right? The Russian, you know, young Russian girl who tests positive for heart. What does she need heart medicine for, right? And she came out and said, well, I guess I inadvertently took my grandpa's heart medicine, and yet there were two other medicines that also that weren't banned, but were also 3 different heart medicines in this young girl, and you realize, you know, probably she's more of a victim than any kind of, you know, malevolent person. I'm sure, you know, her coaches and whatnot gave her this stuff. But you know, but there's a huge controversy about that because she was allowed to compete and just sort of holding off the awards. And what does that do to the other athletes? The issue of drugs in sport is something we could talk about a lot. Many people don't remember, but caffeine was once illegal in sports, right? Above a certain concentration. That concentration, as I remember, was around maybe like, but it was the equivalent of maybe like 4 cups of, so if you went to Starbucks before the big Olympic event and you chugged down a few, you know, espressos, and then you'd be a cheater. You'd have your gold medal taken away if you won that. And I've always said, you know, okay, if you know what the rules are in sport and you agree to those rules, then if you break those rules as an ethical, that's a problem. You're a cheater. You signed on to this. But by the Anabolic Steroid Control Act that made Schedule III drugs out of steroids, suddenly it's like everybody's held to these same standards, even if you're not competing in sports. And I would argue that, look, caffeine, okay, if you sign on, you can't have 4 cups of Starbucks before you compete in the race, that's fine. I want to have as much Starbucks as I want. If I want to have 7 cups, why should the tail of the dog of the anti-doping rules wag the body of the dog, which is all the rest of us who may not be competing in sports? And there are those who argue that, you know, that there's been a mission creep of anti-doping into the general population. They rolled back the caffeine at some point, but they remain, you know, with Ostarine, with Sarms, with steroids, with, you know, various EPO, various other drugs, which continue to be banned in sports. You want to talk a little about your experiences with baseball, Eric, or not?
I got supine. I used to have a lot of baseball. I work a little bit with the... As
your legal advisor, you want to jump in on this here? You know,
so I worked a little with baseball players, right? A little. And
keep it general.
I got subpoena for this grand jury thing, right? And I would never talk about patients. So I pleaded the fifth, right? And I say, hell no, I don't want to talk about that. And I want to give you an example. If I'm a Yankees player, right? And I'm playing on California at 7 p.m. California time, what time is it for me? 10 p.m. Can I see the ball the same way as the guy in California? Absolutely no freaking way. So, you know, it's kind of funny how we talk about anabolic steroids. Anabolic steroids were not as abused as a certain type of ergogenic aid, right? And this ergogenic aid really helps you hit better, throw harder, and it makes you concentrate better. And, you know, for whatever reason, anabolic steroids were included into that component, but this drug was never, ever go against it because it's used for ADHD, right? Which is very interesting, right? But anabolic steroids were a huge deal. A lot of players that were playing during this time of season where there was a lot of home runs being hit, right? And the #1 ever season for amount of fans. So I want to tell you this. I want to go see, I haven't seen a game for 2 years. I want to go see a game. I want to see freaking 50 home runs, you know? I want to stand there, woo-hoo! But, you know, and that's what I think they're going to change the rule because the Major League Baseball people going to the sports is what? Coming down. But if I start seeing home runs again, people are going to start coming again, right? So I would say this, a large percentage of people in baseball use some kind of, I'm going to call it ergogenic aids, okay? It might be amphetamines, or in baseball they're called greenies, okay? It might be anabolic steroid, it might be ostarine, by the way, it might be peptides, which Rick will talk about.
Beta stimulants.
Yes, so all those are used. So when people playing baseball out there think that baseball is benign, absolutely is wrong. I have a wall in my office.
Oh, Mark McGuire.
I don't know where my wire is, but no. Mark is a great guy. Have you guys seen Mark McGuire recently? He weighs 187 pounds, man, and he's 6'5". That tells you something, right? So one drug that was highly abused in baseball, and you guys are not going to believe me, Cialis. You know what? I know girls don't know. Cialis is for the pee-pee disease, right? So if your pee-pee doesn't work, you take Cialis, right? Well, they found out, this very famous pitcher found out that if I take Cialis for 2 days in a row before my pitching game, I can freaking bring it on, and I won't get tired. So he will call me for prescriptions, and you know, I'm his friend. So I said, I got it. And you cannot believe the difference it will make on pitching. It's insane. And now Cialis is being used. I'm not here to teach you guys shit, but Cialis is not used for that purpose. All I can say, you can apply it on your arms, right? You apply it on your arms, right? And you go do bicep curls and you look prettier. So I just want to tell you guys, so I won't talk about that, but baseball was a very disappointing sport for me in the sense that they did not allow steroids. I wanted to see home runs. I wanted to see the guy running faster. I wanted to see the guy hitting harder, you know. And Barry Bonds is not going to make it to the Hall of Fame. Well, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care. Why? Because other people who were doing it, they just picked on him. Now, he's a big mouth, and that's the problem. But, I mean, that's an issue. Mark McGuire didn't take steroids. He only took androstenedione time. And you know, androstenedione was it. What was that? How long was that? Is that legal?
It was by punching.
So, McGuire was what, like 2004 maybe?
2004, yeah.
2002. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, how many people remember Mark McGuire?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay.
The ladies do.
And remember that he had, you know, I guess a journalist was in the locker room, and McGuire opens up his locker, and you know, I think that people were suspecting him of using steroids. So I guess maybe one theory is that he, you know, was looking for some sort of, you know, scapegoat for his physical expansion. And so he opens it up, and there's a bottle of Andro conveniently placed for the journalists to see, which then would, you know, explain why he weighed, what was he at his peak? Like
65 to 7.
Okay.
To
So
72.
almost 90-pound difference from now. I mean, okay. So Andro got on the radar screen. FDA, Andro's weird because Andro is a natural hormone, It's in the present. It's present in the foods that we eat. So a question was whether it would even qualify as a supplement ingredient or not. FDA put the kibosh on that and actually did specifically said andro is not a legal dietary supplement ingredient. And then later, the Anabolic Steroid Control Act has sort of morphed. Sometimes I wonder if Congress really knows what it's doing, you know, who's advising Congress about all of our laws. I mean, I wrote this in my book, Legal Muscle, is that in researching that book and in my previous work, I learned everything there was to know about steroids from every possible angle, including all the legal aspects of it. And when you realized, you know, how little the public knows about something from government, from the special interests who talk to the media itself that tends to report what it wants with its own narratives. And I wondered whether, if any of us looked into a topic with that level of specificity and detail, whatever it was, U.S. history, our relations with a particular country, anything, whether we would find that what most people believe has very little to do with the actual reality. It was really terrifying. So Congress made that law in 1990, which was interestingly the year that I went into practice. So in private practice, I had been a prosecutor up until then, and I went into practice in 1990. Which, you know, timing is everything, right? So suddenly the drug that, you know, as a former bodybuilder, as a gym guy, as somebody who's, you know, been training since I was, you know, 16 years old, suddenly the drug that was prevalent in the gyms was suddenly turned into heroin and cocaine in the same act with these other drugs. And the people in the gyms had no idea. What are you talking about? And the people in the courts had, you know, well, this is like heroin and cocaine. So there was this massive disconnect between the users, the non-medical users of anabolic steroids, and the people who were now tasked with punishing them for that use. And so that was the year that I went to practice. And so as somebody who had sort of a foot in both of those worlds, you know, thanks to Ben Johnson 2 years earlier, you know, suddenly that became my practice, and it was really nothing that I was not smart enough to have really intended it. You know, it was sort of just the accidental growth, the organic growth of what interested me, what my background was, and so I wound up getting involved in it. And the Steroid Control Act in 1990 was amended in 2004 to expand. They specifically added androstenedione.
They wanted to add DHEA too. Remember, they wanted to add DHEA.
They wanted to add DHEA, but old people like DHEA. Old people love it, and so Congress and Orrin Hatch was the senator, the Utah senator at the time, who heard how much old people like DHEA. And so if you look at the Anabolic Steroid Control Act, DHEA is specifically exempted from the Anabolic Steroid Control Act as a wink, wink, you know, for those the older folks who liked it, you know. So, and then, you know, Congress realized in 2004, they thought that they expanded, they added a bunch of pro-hormones, and they thought, all right, well, now we fixed it. It was too limited before, now we fixed it. A couple of years later, oops, nope, we didn't fix it. So now in 2014, they again amended the law and expanded it, you know. And even that doesn't fully address all of the issues. But, you know, the fact that it took 3 times to get it right, you know, says something.
To get it right.
Well,
yes, a question.
Do you think this is mostly, right, because who has their money in Washington is pro forma, right? So is it mostly them pushing for these drugs to be kind of limited in their use, like androstenedione, right, and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, you know, and we've talked about this a number of times. You know, testosterone esters, you know, testosterone cypionate, testosterone enanthate, you know, there's no money in it for Big Pharma, really. There's no real money. The only money is to come up with, because you need a patent. It's a long-off patent. You know, a 10 cc vial of testosterone sip or an ante is $60 or
Yeah.
something. You know, it's virtually, it's not a lot of money. So the money, as they've talked about, is in either coming up with other new patented drugs to do the same things. So, oh, you need a pee-pee pill, as Eric says, well, we'll give you the pee-pee pill instead of something that, because there's a patent on this and we can make some money out of it. And so there is some of that going on for sure. The money with steroids or testosterone would be in the administration aspect. So you're seeing these things like, all right, well, you know, we can't get any money out of an injectable steroid because there's no patent on that. How about we come up with a way of sticking testosterone up our nose, okay, or into our cheek, or into the eye, or whatever it is.
They came with a new injection. You guys, you know what okay, a drug only have a patent for 20 years, right? A delivery system have 100 years, right? So those pens that you see for diabetes, it's not because they want to be nice to you. Oh, we want to make sure that you can see or click. Bullshit. It's because the pen, I can have Lantus, I can have insulin on a bottle, but the pen with I did the study, that's what you cannot say, it's not the same. So they came up with a new system called Zyostat. Are you guys familiar with Zyostat? Okay, Zyostat is an EpiPen that delivers testosterone, and of course, it's good for you because you cannot take more, you cannot take less, and I'm a wussy for shots. I will never give myself a shot, but this is pretty easy. You go like clack, like a knife, and it goes. You don't. When patients tell me you don't feel it,
It's subcutaneous, right?
subcutaneous, and it's amazing because now I have a pen delivery system that is going to give me a lot of money, and that's what they're selling it right now. So it's crazy. It's called Zyostat for those people that want to know.
I have another question, because I make this argument all the time with people, that there's no such thing as a natural athlete, like a professional natural athlete. How do you guys feel?
So the question is, to repeat it for people in here, if this is such thing as a natural athlete, I'm going to answer, I want Rick's opinion here. Anybody, George is exempted, and Rick is exempted. Anybody that writes a book, okay, about how I won, is taking steroids. I'm going to say that. And I know you guys are going to say, please, if you're a big winner and you're on the top of the lion chain, shit. When Michael Phelps jumped on that swimming pool, he got dirt, So, I mean, I'm going to tell you this. Anybody that writes a book and says, I'm a winner, and they never talk about what they do besides training, okay, you have to have a doubt on that. I'm going to tell you that. So be aware of that. George admitted, hey, I took steroids, I'm going to write a book about it. But most of the people that I will see are insanely on drugs. So I'm going to say drugs, I'm not talking just anabolic steroids, right? I'm talking about other sources of things that they will benefit from it. So be aware of that. When I was competing in real sports, like powerlifting, not like bodybuilder, with a bikini, right? I always thought that, there's going to be a point in time that I'm going to take it because I want to be at the top of the chain. And the last I competed on the nationals, my daughter told me, after I was done, that is the most boring sport I ever seen. And then she asked me, do you take drugs? I said, no, I do not. I've never taken drugs. I'm going to beat everybody without drugs. Which, of course, the winner of that particular freaking nationals was my patient, and I was doing his drug program. He beat me by 2 pounds. So, but it's insane that we do not talk about medications when you're competing with you should.
And I think we have to add that a lot of people hang their hat on natural versus unnatural on testosterone or anabolics. And I get athletes that come to me, and this is like low-level, local, like the little bikini girl who's doing her second show. And they say, I've done this natural, and then they tell me they've been taking clenbuterol and amino acids, which they're augmenting their intuitive eating. I mean, technically, is that natural? Are you waking up and eating what your body is? Yes. What is natural?
In this room, there's a very powerful athlete, used to be. She's old now. And she competed, and she had a lot of world records. Stand up, Mara. So when she was very good. My dad doesn't remember this. I was at Louis and a girl squatted more than I could, which she pisses me off, right? So of course, she's laughing at me, she's saying yes. So here I am standing, here this come a skinny girl, weight less than I do. I'm thinking, shit, I'm in a long hole here. So, but Maria, what do you think about medications and sports? What do you think about it?
They're not for beginners. They're not to be influenced as a high school student. If you're a coach or a trainer, it's imperative. So it's imperative. So that they might believe and see, well, this is really the natural me. I eat hamburgers and french fries. I'm not medicated. I'm a pretty strong stance on high school and college, and then it's creeping into college. And then when it takes that step, I think you now have another role to say, let's talk about it. What are you? Let's not be stupid. Be careful, and let's talk to your family. I bet your mom and dad aren't going to be real happy. So that's like,
I have parents that bring me their child, and I know from all over, bring me their child because they want it, and these are high schoolers, to start taking anabolic steroids or even growth hormone. I'm not making this up. I had a family that were 3 brothers, real in Phoenix, some area, right? The brother is 6'7", the other brother is 6'7", and the best one, amazing quarterback, he was only 6'5". So he needed to be at the height of his brothers because he couldn't see over the line. As freaking 6'5", dude, give me a freaking break. And the parents wanted to put that child on growth hormone. And I kicked them out of my office, you know, because I don't compromise my values. I say, don't be stupid as hell. You have a child, take care of your child, you know what I'm saying? But we in America like the immediate, you know, hey, I feel good immediately, which that's the problem.
So answering your question, as a doctor who abused drugs, became a champion, and now writes about the prevention and harm reduction, I believe that drugs take you to the next level, but certainly do not make you a champion. So talent, hard work, discipline. Okay, if everybody takes the same amount of drug, the one who's going to win is the one with the supreme genetics and the hard work. And usually drugs are for the lazy ones. You can be dedicated. If you take half of the dose of the lazy ones, you can win. But I believe we'll always be hide and seek in the sports because the level is too high. The funds are very appealing, you know, because the athletes are people that are not going to retire in the 65s. They have to make a bust until the 20s or late 30s. Late 20s, if they are lucky enough to stay healthy, you know. So, of course, in bodybuilding, there's no drug test, okay? And more is not necessarily better, because we know people who abused and died and never won trophies, unlike people with supreme genetics that made their legacies, you know? So I believe more is not better, and certainly they make a difference, but being a champion is something different. So we know hundreds of pros, African pros. Only 16 managed to win the Mr. Olympia, you know? So it's about genes and hard work.
I think we also have to talk about a little bit, and especially in the bodybuilding world, the trust the process, trust your coach mentality that we constantly are pressing with these athletes. You know, don't ask another person if your protocol that your coach has recommended or